Hi, good evening. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, organizing committee, for the invitation, especially Dr. Sohail. So today we are talking about demyelinating disorders and with respect to the neuroradiology findings. So the objectives are mainly our emphasis will be on the MS. So we're going to discuss typical findings in MS, the new 2017 McDonald criteria, some other demyelinating disorders, red flags, and then advanced MS imaging. Okay, before go further, I will show you these three cases. So you can look at these and think, so which one of these has MS? Give you a second here. So the first case is Suzak syndrome. Second one is Lyme disease. And the third one is vasculitis. So I just showed these cases to emphasize that these white matter changes are very common and they are not all of them has MS. So as you know, multiple sclerosis is inflammatory demyelinating disorders of the white matter, which leads to neurodegeneration. And it is basically a perivenular lymphocytic infiltration and demyelination. As you can see here, the lumen of the vessel and then the surrounding cells. So before I go into the detail, the McDonald criteria, we're just going to take a look at the typical lesions of MS on MRI. So these are periventricular, usually at right angle to the ventricular surface. These can be cortical or juxtacortical, infratentorial, or in the spinal cord. And the typical lesions are triangular in shape. They can be pericallosal, and then along the callososeptal interface. They can have a Dawson finger appearance, incomplete ring enhancement, or nodular enhancement. Like this, you can see here is a typical periventricular lesion. It is at right angle. And these lesions are very specific for MS along the temporal horn. I will show you a few more examples. Here another lesion, you can see these are periventricular at right angle. So these are called the Dawson fingers. And here are the more typical lesion along the callososeptal interface. These are quite specific for MS, although can be seen some other disorders. Here is another lesion. And then we have the cortical or the juxtacortical lesions. In the infratentorial or the brainstem lesion, so these are again usually triangular and at the surface of the brainstem. And you can also see a typical periventricular lesion along the temporal horn. On the post contrast, there can be like a nodular enhancement, or it can be incomplete ring enhancement, which is more specific of demyelinating disorders. In the spine, these lesions are usually small, less than 1 vertebral body length. And as you can see here on the gradient echo images, they're involving the white matter. So I will going to show you a couple cases here. If we look at this case, looks like very little changes and maybe non-specific, some lesion here, some here. And if we look at this image, we don't see any lesion. So the sagittal, as you know, the sagittal flare images are very important. So there is a one lesion here at the callososeptal interface. Why we don't see it here? So it's maybe just a subtle lesion you can see. So so this, as I was telling before, why we don't see the lesion here. So here is the lesion in the corpus callosum, and this line tell you from where the axial image is coming. So axial image is just coming along the bottom of the lesion, so that's why we don't see it. As we always get the sagittal flare images. So again, you can see another lesion here. So this looks like would be cortical, juxtacortical lesion. And if we change the window, now you can see this is basically a juxtacortical lesion. So whenever you are looking for MS lesion, if the findings are subtle, make sure you narrow the window and look at these lesions. Here's another recent case. The patient has some like symptoms related to spinal cord. So you can see there's a quite a big lesion. It may be along the 3 vertebral body length. Here you can see it has incomplete enhancement. So it is a demyelinating lesion. As it is a large lesion, it could be NMO, it still could be MS. So this is the brain image, routine brain images, and we just saw only one lesion here. On this image, There may be a subtle lesion here. So here is the importance of this narrow window. And now you can see this lesion more clearly on the narrow window. Again, here on the routine window, you don't see almost anything. There's a subtle lesion here. And again, if you change the window, like a narrow window, then you can see this lesion. So again, we call the patient back and we did the sagittal images, and now you can see here is a periclosal lesion. Here is a small lesion along the clososeptal interface, and now we have we are convinced that this is a MS. So I showed these two cases for two reasons. First of all, we have to make this a narrow window, and the other thing is the sagittal FLAIR images are must. So in the spine, you see this like a lesion on the STIR image, and you don't see in the T2. So this is very common. So then we think, is it a real lesion or it is an artifact? So we do the phase sensitive inversion recovery, and you can see this lesion is hypo-intense on this sequence. So this is very helpful when there is a doubt whether we are looking at a real lesion or an artifact, as it is only visible on the sagittal image. Similarly, we have seen that the lesion on the axial images are better seen on axial gradient echo images as compared to the T2. So here you can see T2, we don't see almost any lesion. And if you go to the gradient echo, you see this typical lesion. So again, whenever you are doing the MS cases, make sure you have this gradient echo image in the C-spine. Okay, so let's go through the McDonald criteria here. So the basic purpose of the McDonald criteria is we apply this only when we are suspecting like a clinically isolated syndrome. If we apply it without this picture, then the findings cannot be that specific. And again, as according to the McDonald criteria, there should not be any other explanation for the patient presentation. And then these lesions should fulfill the dissemination in time and space. And the basic purpose of the McDonald criteria is to facilitate the early diagnosis. So again, McDonald criteria is not to differentiate MS from other lesion. It is basically to confirm the MS in the patient who is presenting as clinically isolated syndrome. So according to the McDonald criteria, the lesion should be at least 3 millimeter. The juxtacortical lesion should be touching the cortex. Periventricular lesion should be touching the ventricle. There should not be any white matter. If the lesion is in the corpus callosum along the clososeptal interface, we count that as periventricular lesion. If it is in the deep gray matter like caudate nucleus, then that is not counted as a periventricular lesion. So here's the McDonald criteria. There should be dissemination in space. And then either there should be dissemination in time or there should be oligoclonal bands in the CSF. So what is dissemination in space? There should be at least one or more lesions in one of these 4 sites, like a periventricular lesion, cortical, juxtacortical, infratentorial, or spinal cord lesion. And what is dissemination in time? If it is a first scan and you see the lesions which are enhancing as well as non-enhancing, so that will fulfill your criteria for dissemination in time. Or other thing, if you have a follow-up exam, you see a new T2 hyperintense lesion or you see a new enhancing lesion, so that also fulfill the criteria for dissemination in time. And the other thing in the McDonald criteria 2017, which was not there before, if you don't have dissemination in time, but if you have like a 2 oligoclonal bands in the CSF, so that also fulfill the criteria for MS. But before you apply this oligoclonal band criteria, make sure the patient has typical clinical isolated syndrome. They meet the criteria for dissemination in space. There is no better explanation for the clinical findings. And then there is an absence of atypical findings on CSF. So what is the difference between McDonald criteria 2017 and the older one from 2010? So number one is this addition of the oligoclonal bands. And now we can count symptomatic as well as asymptomatic lesions. And they also included the cortical lesions. So this is a European group, the Magnum from 2016. So their guidelines are almost similar for dissemination in space. There are 2 differences. One is that there should be 3 periventricular lesions. According to McDonald criteria, 1 lesion is sufficient. And the other thing, they also count optic nerve lesion for a dissemination in space, but we don't count that is in the McDonald criteria. So let's look at some cases of tumor-effective MS. As you know, these lesions are 2 centimeter or larger. And the other typical findings are they are like open ring enhancement or incomplete ring enhancement, usually no mass effect, sometimes they can have. And they don't have hypercellular, hypermetabolic, or hypervascular features. It means that the CBV is low in this patient, and they also have lack of central diffusion restriction because these are not hypercellular lesions. And then we look for the presence of other typical MS lesions. So I will show you 2 cases on like at the marginal spectrum and then at the extreme spectrum here. So here is a lesion about 2 centimeter. There's no mass effect. There's a marginal diffusion restriction. So no diffusion restriction in the center, so that if there's a diffusion restriction in the center, we should think something else. And here is a post-contrast image, and you can see there is a incomplete ring enhancement. And again, we look for other lesion to support our diagnosis as this patient has this periventricular lesion. So that was one spectrum of tumor-effective MS. This is also a tumor-effective MS, although normally we said they don't have edema, they don't have mass effect. So this is one of our case. This is a very large lesion. There's an edema along with it. There is also mass effect, and you can see how here the ventricles are compressed. But there's some peculiar finding here. You can see these lines going through here. So these usually we don't see in mass lesions. So again, on the diffusion images, we can see peripheral diffusion restriction. Here is the ADC, but there is no central diffusion restriction. But still, it looks very worrisome like mass. Sometimes GBN can have a central necrosis, and we only see the peripheral diffusion restriction. So here again, you can see on the T2 and T1. So it's a large lesion with edema. But this is more specific for demyelinating disease as it is an incomplete ring enhancement. The spectroscopy does not help. If you look here, you can see this is a lactate peak. NAA is very low, and there's a high choline creatine ratio. This we can see in tumor. So normally we don't do this spectroscopy in the demyelinating cases, although quantitative spectroscopy may help. So again, you can see this big lesion, but how the other supportive diagnostic findings are, you look for other lesions which are typical of MS, so that support your diagnosis of tumor-effective MS. So this is a 6-month follow-up in this patient, and now you can see the lesion is much smaller. So here's another form of demyelinating disease. So again, a large lesion. But if you look here, this has like a multiple rings. So this is called onion peel appearance. On the diffusion, again, you see the peripheral diffusion restriction, no central diffusion restriction. And on the post-contrast images, you can see one incomplete ring of enhancement here. There's another second incomplete ring of enhancement. So this is your Ballo's concentric sclerosis. This is more aggressive form of MS. So these have those large lesions with concentric rings. And again, like the last patient, if you look at here, this is a spectroscopy at 135 TE. So there's a lactate peak. Na is very low. Choline is too high as compared to the creatine. Look like a tumor spectrum. So again, this is not that helpful for differentiation from tumor. So the PML, as you know, with the new medications of the MS, not only the HIV patient, the MS patient can have also a PML. So we have to look for that. So these are subcortical, large confluent lesion, can be small, non-enhancing, can be multifocal, can affect cerebellum. This is important. They are hypo-intense on T1. And then they can have marginal diffusion restriction. This is more specific finding. They can have this Milky Way appearance and lack of mass effect. So here is a typical lesion. Again, you can see it is subcortical, bright on T2, no mass effect. So big lesion, but you can still see the sulci within the lesion. And it is hypo-intense on T1. If it is not on hypo-intense on T1, think something else. And there is, again, you can see the marginal diffusion restriction. This is the post-contrast image. There is usually no enhancement. Here's another form, early form of PML. This usually happen in the patient who have MS. You see all these multiple bright T2 spots here. And again, you can see here, and then they can become confluent, and then you can have a larger lesion like this. So those bright spots which I show you, they call it Milky Way appearance. They resemble like star. So again, this is more specific for PML. So if you have a case of MS, you are following it, and you are thinking if it is a tumefactive demyelination or if it is PML, look for this sign Milky Way appearance. So what is the differential diagnosis for MS? So again, the same group, the Magnum group, they met in 2006 and they come up with the red flags. I like this paper much for the differential diagnosis of MS. And again, we have to apply this criteria, no better explanation. So in order to expand this concept, they came up with these red flags. So what are the red flags which are suggestive of alternative diagnosis than MS? So if there's a large lesion, it's not typical MS. It could be the aggressive variant like Marburg disease, could be Bellow's concentric sclerosis, or it could be primary vasculitis. If the lesions are symmetrically distributed, it could be ADEM, it could be adult form of leukoencephalopathy. If the margins of the lesions are poorly defined, it could be ADEM. And again, if there's no Dawson fingers, the corpus callosum or the periventricular region is not involved, it could be, then again, could be ADM. But sometimes you will see involvement of the periventricular region with ADM. And again, if you do the follow-up exam and if you don't see any activity, so those are ADM. If you have involvement of the anterior temporal lobe, U fibers, external capsule, so that then think about CADASIL. So multiple bilateral small hemorrhages, think about CADASIL, small vessel ischemic disease, lesion in the center of corpus callosum, Suzak syndrome. And then if you have a large hemorrhage or multiple small hemorrhage, think about primary vasculitis of the CNS. If the lesions are enhancing, most of the lesions are enhancing, those are not usually MS. It could be ADM, vasculitis, sarcoidosis. If you have multiple infarct, again, it could be vasculitis, small vessel ischemic disease. And if you have punctiform enhancement, could be vasculitis, sarcoidosis, or Behçet disease. We already looked about the PML. If the gray matter is involved, it could be MELAS, encephalitis, or some other disorder. If the deep matter is involved, then again, it could be ADM, could be CADASIL. If you have a lacunar infarct, could be CADASIL, small vessel ischemic disease. And if you have a T1 hyperintensity in the pulvinar, it could be Fabry's disease. So if you have multiple discrete lesion, the basal ganglia and the thalamic, again, could be Suzak syndrome, large infiltrating lesion in the basal ganglia, brainstem, it could be Behçet disease. We'll see some examples soon here. So if a large spinal cord lesion, could be NMO. And again, they usually have T1 hypointensity, could be ADM, acute transverse myelitis, Sjogren syndrome, and some other disorders as well. If you have meningeal enhancement, then think something else like Suzak syndrome, could be primary CNS vasculitis, Behçet's disease, Lyme's disease, or sarcoidosis. If you have a regional atrophy, then it can happen in the hyperhomocystinemia or Behçet's disease. So let's take a look at some cases here, the ADM versus MS. So as we already said, the ADM can involve more gray matter. They can spare periventricular region, corpus callosum, and the pericallosal area. There are multiple large lesions, and they simultaneously they enhance. So this is more specific of ADM as compared to MS. So here's a typical case of ADM. You can see all of these lesions are enhancing. Almost all of them has diffusion restriction. If you look at the T2, they are a little bit ill-defined. And again, some have complete ring enhancement, some have incomplete. But the important thing is almost all of these lesions are enhancing. Again, here, multiple lesions. As I said, sometimes they can involve corpus callosum. And here's a typical lesion in the brainstem. This spinal cord is also involved. This is very important. We see everyday white matter lesions on the brain. We say non-specific. And most of these are either due to small vessel ischemic disease or due to migraine. So how we can differentiate? Small vessel ischemic disease is much more common. It has They can be cortical infarct, lacunar infarct, basal ganglia is involved. They can have microhemorrhage. You can have a lot of small vessel ischemic disease, but they spare the anterior temporal lobe, cerebellum, corpus callosum, and they usually don't have T1 hypointensity until they have microinfarcts. So these are important to differentiate from MS. We'll see examples here. So this is a small vessel ischemic disease. It could be MS, so many lesions, some are periventricular. And again, on the T1, you don't see any hypointensity, but this is more specific. Usually more than 90% of these small vessel ischemic disease, you don't see anything in the temporal horn. Here another patient with a small vessel ischemic disease, so extensive disease. But again, if you go to the temporal lobe, those are spared. So these are they're more likely to be small vessel as compared to MS. Here's another one, small vessels. We see so many lesions. Some are periventricular, some are larger lesions. This looks like an almost typical lesion of MS, but if you go to the temporal lobe, these are not involved. Another thing is that when the pons is usually involved in small vessel disease, but the lesion is in the center of the pons. The MS lesions are usually at the surface of the brainstem. And these microhemorrhages also support the diagnosis of small vessel ischemic disease. And again, on the T1, no hypointensity. This patient has another hemorrhage due to hypertension. If the patient is more than 50 years old or they have vascular risk factors, according to McDonald criteria, we should look for more lesion. Although it is not necessary, one lesion is sufficient, but they recommend to look for more lesions. Here's a Behçet disease, is a periventricular lesion, juxtacortical lesion. Here is in the internal capsule, even the mid-cerebellar peduncle is involved. So everything is not MS, so we have to look at the clinical findings. So when this patient follow up, this looks like a juxtacortical and a periventricular lesion. If we see at this stage, this case, we may have diagnosed MS, but this is a Behçet's disease. Susak syndrome, we already, the clinical findings, that here it looks like almost MS, periventricular lesion, more periventricular lesion, posterior fossa is involved just like MS, but this lesion is more specific for Susak. You have a lesion in the center of the corpus callosum with sparing of the callosocaptal interface. So NMO, so the panel from the McDonald criteria, they say whenever you're suspecting demyelinating disease, MS, you should also test for the serological markers for NMOSD or other disorders. So a little bit about the NMO or the NMOSD, the spectrum disorder. There are two types. They can have positive IgG. In these cases, you need only one typical clinical symptom, and the positive for this aquaporin 4 IgG, then you have the diagnosis of NMOSD. And if they are negative for antibody, then you should have two or more typical clinical symptoms. And then there should be some other criteria on the MRI I will show you soon here. So one of the clinical symptoms is optic neuritis, but they should have almost involvement of more than half of the optic nerve, or typically the posterior optic nerve or optic chiasm is involved. Other typical clinical finding is acute myelitis, but as we know, there should be involvement of more than 3 vertebral body length. And if they have area postrema syndromes, so the dorsal medulla or the area postrema should be involved on MRI. So these are the images from that paper. You can see a lesion going to the area postrema. You can have a focal atrophy later on. So this is involving more than 2/3 of the optic nerve. This is also involving the optic chiasm. These are typical periventricular lesion, and again here the area postrema is involved. They can have a large lesion like a tumefactive looking. Corpus callosum can be involved, and here you can see the corticospinal tracts are involved. So just a few more images here. So the future of MS imaging, as you know, the MS involves the perivascular area, perivenular area. These are the transmedullary veins. Most of them run perpendicular, but you also see some periventricular. So they have come up with this imaging technique, like a FLAIR star. You get a normal FLAIR, you get a gradient echo image, you multiply this image, and you get this FLAIR star image. So what is specific here, almost each of these lesions, you can see this central vein. So this is more specific for MS. It can happen in other diseases, But if the more than 40% lesion has this central vessel, then it is more specific for MS. Here is another lesion. Again, you can see this central vein here as well as here. Even in the brainstem, you can see lesion along the central vein. So these are patients in MS and multiple other diseases, migraine, ischemia. MS patient has this central vein. All of these lesion does not have central vein. I will blow up one of the image here. So again, you can see this perivenular lesion. So I think in the future, as this more and more center can do this, this will be more helpful. Here's another patient. You can see almost every lesion has this central vein. And the chronic active lesion, they have like there's like a failure of remyelination. So they have a chronic inflammation and microglia, which has hemosiderin. So on the MRI, the hemosiderin on this SWI images on the phase sequence, you will see this like a dark rim around the lesion. If I blow up here, so like this lesion has this dark rim. So you can predict that the patient who has these kind of lesion, they are going to progress. Here again, you can see this more like peripheral hypointense rim here and peripheral hypointense rim here. The couple more things here. So this subtraction imaging is helpful. Old exam, new exam, you subtract the image, it will show you this lesion. It is more helpful when there are too many lesions, like in this patient. Old exam, new exam, you subtract it and you get it, this one lesion. So this will save a lot of time and will improve the diagnosis. Another patient, it's very hard to pick old, new, which one is new. So this is telling us the subtraction, this is new. So if you go back, this is new lesion, and this area was empty here. So I think this will play a great role in future to make more accurate diagnosis of progression. We have started developing our own program. This is just for those who know the programming. These are the different steps to do the subtraction. So we have this case, this patient has 16 lesions, and we subtracted all of the old and the new scan and only label this lesion. Then we go back to the images and compare it. So the new one has lesion here and the old one does not. So this program automatically align the images, subtract the calvarium. I will show you another subtle example. New case, old case, it's a new lesion. It's a small one. Suppose if you have 100 of lesion, it's difficult to pick. If you do the subtraction, you can see this lesion here. Similarly, there's another very subtle lesion right here. There's a new one, old one, you don't see it. And now on the subtraction, you can see like this. So hopefully when we validate this software, we will provide anyone who want to have this program so they can apply it at their own hospital. These are not fancy images, just regular FLAIR images, not 3D. And we just do the subtraction and you can see the progression. Other thing is, as you know, the MS patient has developed atrophy. Like this is over the images of the 6 year. If you have this automated program which can do the segmentation, so this can tell you about better, you can early detect the volume loss. Just the last thing here. So as you know, the criteria for McDonald has included cortical lesions. So these are the sequences which can show you the cortical lesions better. Like here, so the phase sensitive inversion recovery, you see this small lesion. On the double inversion recovery, you can see this lesion here. On the routine FLAIR, you don't see that much. So similarly, this lesion, almost invisible. And here you can see it is obvious. And on this sequence, you can see this is also obvious. But if you don't have this sequence, you can do this. This is a normal, like a FLAIR image, no 3D, on a 1.5 T Tesla. There's a lesion here, it's very hard to see. So whenever in doubt, make your window narrow, contrast like this, you can see how these lesions stands out. And then there is another smaller lesion here. It is very hard to see on this one. For that, I thank you.